You were able to highlight a pretty big problem. You identified this on social media last week from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Can you kind of walk us through how all this started?
Yeah, it was, well, I guess I didn't identify the problem initially. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did when she sent out a tweet with apparently pictures from her Abuela's, that's grandmother, by the way, for those who aren't bilingual like me, from her grandmother's home in Puerto Rico. And it's dilapidated. She basically appears to be living in some sort of crumbling, unfurnished shack. And there's the ceiling tiles are falling down, and she's got buckets all over the place. And she said that her home had been in this condition since Hurricane Maria, which was like 4 years ago. And she blamed it on Trump. And 4 years later, her home is still in this state. And of course, a lot of people had to question, myself included. And I sent this tweet to her in response to what she said, saying, you're a wealthy single woman, a politician. You got 2 apartments. You got a Tesla that you just bought or are leasing. Why can't you fork over the money? And she responded to me, and she said that, well, she's focused on the systemic problems. And I guess basically she's looking at this in terms of the systemic issue, and she's going to wait for a systemic solution, meaning the government to solve it. And so we said, okay, well, 4 years later, still hasn't been solved. You're gonna wait around maybe another 2 years or 3 years or however long for it to be solved. Instead, we could solve this problem today. And so I started the fundraiser for Abuela's home to fix the ceiling and to fix up the house. And we raised $100,000 in 10 hours. And before they finally shut it down.
Yeah, this is incredible, and this is real money. This isn't like the people in your audience came together in a very short time. I mean, it could have been a lot more than $100,000 if they didn't stop it. And this was real money that could have actually gone to help not only Abuela but others in the community.
Yeah, I mean, there are some who have accused me of trolling with this charity campaign. A form of, you could call it trollanthropy, I guess. And I'll leave that for anyone else to judge what my motivations are. I can't speak to my own motivations. But what I do know is that it is real money, as you say. The money is not a troll. The money is real, and it's there, and it can have a real effect. And that's correct. I mean, $100,000 in 10 hours. You think about, well, what if that was on a Friday that they shut down Friday night? What if it had been allowed to go through the weekend until Monday or something? I think we could have raised $1 million or gotten close to it. And then not only can you fix up Abuela's home, but they could have taken that money and said, all right, we only need X amount to fix the ceiling and to fix up the house. We're going to give the rest to the community, and we're going to revitalize the entire community with all this money. They could have done that. And I wish that they had done that, but they decided instead that they don't want the money at all, which raises a lot of questions. To me, it indicates either that Abuela's home was not really in the state that AOC portrayed it, which I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's one speculation. And the other is that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would rather her grandmother suffer like that than take money from the likes of us. I think those are like the 2 possible explanations, and neither one is especially flattering.
No, I would agree. I think focusing on this first one is interesting because it does seem perplexing that a person who is as famous as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is, a person who is, as you point out, I mean, she has a very nice salary. She is buying things. She's got apartments with garbage disposals in them now that she's discovering. There's all sorts of amazing things she's been able to do, and she's one of the most recognizable people in the country. The idea that if this is true, that she sat there parading herself on television day after day after day while her grandmother is sitting in squalor in Puerto Rico, I mean, that is completely inexcusable.
Yeah, I mean, of course it is. And I thought what made it especially disturbing for me is what she said about the systemic problem and the problem across the entire community. And that appears to be where her focus is. I'm not saying that we shouldn't worry about the broader societal problems, but to lump your own family in with that and to essentially say, well, we'll get around to my family whenever the system, whenever we can fix the systemic problems, then we can fix, the suffering of my loved ones. That just seems completely backwards. You should care for the people closest to you first, and then we can move out from there. and help the community. I mean, that's the way that I would approach it if I were her.
It really does say something about her mindset, right? I mean, the fact that she didn't see, I mean, the campaign was brilliant. I don't know that she would have seen that coming, but the fact that she wouldn't see criticism coming from posting this, to her, it was just an example of government letting others down. At no point, I don't even think that she even considered that it might be her responsibility.
Yeah, I think so. And I think also if maybe a cynical interpretation of this, and again, we're left to speculate because they shut down the campaign. They never even really told us who exactly made the decision. They said that the beneficiary's family doesn't want it. They didn't even tell us the beneficiary doesn't want it. They said her family doesn't want it, which that's interesting. I didn't know that the family is allowed to decline it on behalf of the beneficiary. But so we weren't told anything. I reached out to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She never responded. So we're only left to speculate. And so another speculation, which is maybe a little cynical, but you might wonder, would she prefer to have the problem because the problem is politically useful? Would she prefer that over the solution? Because as far as her grandmother goes anyway, we presented her the solution to that problem on a silver platter, $100,000. That solves the problem, at least of her house, I would think. And she didn't want it. And it does make you wonder, some of these people, would they rather? Maybe it's not really about solving problems at all. Maybe they prefer to have the problem.
It certainly seems like she would rather have the problem than to allow you to solve it, or allow your audience, or allow conservatives who are giving their own hard-earned money to solve it. I mean, that does not seem to be the type of thing that she is even interested in. And I think it goes back to this sort of, because obviously she's an out socialist, as it were, but there's something more defining about her that I think she has to be the victim in every single circumstance. She was the victim not only because the government would not help her grandma, but also then with this terrible assault that you committed by trying to give her $100,000. She's just always on the wrong side of this, always the victim, and that's what's really important to her.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it was an unconscionable attack on my part to try to give her grandmother $100,000. Which a fair warning to others, though, like, don't come after me, because if you mess around, I might raise $100,000 for you. But I mean, this is she often will use emotional blackmail, her own situation or her family situation, and this is not just her. I think this is a common tactic on the left in general, where they use emotional blackmail, and then as soon as they put that out there, their own personal trauma or whatever their family's going through, then everyone else it's supposed to shut down the conversation. We can't talk about it anymore. We have to just do whatever they say. And so I think maybe one thing we did with this was kind of call her bluff a little bit. And so that's, unfortunately, we couldn't actually, I wish that we could have gotten the money to Abuela, and we didn't, but maybe that's one lesson we learned from it anyway.
What is next for Abuela, Matt?
I listen, if I could, I tried. I did everything that I could. I mean, I could try to fly to Puerto Rico myself and find her, but I mean, I'd be traveling around the entire country looking. So I don't know. Maybe she's got another granddaughter who's a little more charitable. That's all I can hope for.
It's a really devastating time and a sad situation. Who knew that this was a problem for people in the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez circle? I was unaware of it, but I'm glad you at least tried to step up and show the American spirit, because that is the American spirit. And I think that's what's so frustrating to someone like AOC. The American spirit is not wait around for government to come help you. It is doing what you did. I mean, I know the trollanthropy aside, that is how we solve problems in this country. We've been doing it since the founding, and it so angers people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that the people she vilifies and calls, white supremacists are the people who are standing up to help her Puerto Rican abuela. It's not her.
Yeah, I think it is the American spirit. And that's why actually you say she didn't want the money because it's from me and it's from conservatives. I think that's probably part of it, but I actually think no matter what our ideological leanings are, I don't think socialists and leftists, they just don't want Americans solving problems on their own without government assistance, because it doesn't work with their ideology. I think that's what it comes down to.
Matt Walsh, it was a brilliant moment, Matt. We really appreciate it. The book, by the way, is called Church of Cowards. If you don't have it yet, you got to get it. It's a wake-up call to complacent Christians. Matt, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.